We didn't officially break up, Howard.
Right.
You're still together?
I just thought it was time that I exercised my right to make a solo album.
A secret war was waged against Sting, with three of music's biggest names leading the charge with pure, raw hate. This smooth superstar, known for his smart pop music, seemed to be loved by everyone. But behind the scenes, some of rock's most powerful voices openly showed their anger towards him. This went far beyond dislike, becoming a deep and powerful obsession for them. Let us now name the titans of rock who aimed their rage directly at Sting, sparking an unforgettable feud. Number 1. John Lydon.
We became so big so quick that it was too earth-shattering to really deal with sensibly.
In the loud and messy world of London in 1977, a musical war was brewing. On one side, you had the Sex Pistols, a band that was like a Molotov cocktail thrown at the music business. They were messy, angry, and screamed about having no future. Their leader was John Lydon, better known as Johnny Rotten, a man who used his sharp wit and sneer like weapons. On the other side, you had the Police, a trio of very skilled musicians who played a clean, catchy mix of reggae, pop, and rock. To John Lydon, the Police, and especially their frontman Sting, were not just another band.
Or practice or whatever. He'd come into the local pubs and he'd hang out with the locals. That was very important.
They were the enemy. His dislike for Sting wasn't a secret. It was a loud, public, and very funny campaign of insults that has lasted for decades. He once famously called the band "soggy dead carcasses," a perfect insult to describe how he saw them: wet, lifeless, and without any of the raw, real energy that he believed was the heart of true rock and roll. For Lydon, music had to be honest, even if that honesty was ugly. He saw the Police as selling a pretty well-played lie. The main reason for Lydon's deep dislike came from his obsession with things being real.
I found it fascinating and interesting. I've been around a few years, like not as old as I used to be.
The Sex Pistols were born from the anger and boredom of young people in England who felt they had no voice. Their music was a direct punch in the face of the system. Lydon saw the Police as the complete opposite. He viewed them as a carefully planned business, led by a former schoolteacher who borrowed the look of punk and the sounds of Jamaican reggae to become a pop star. The mean nickname he gave Sting was simple, but cut deep: Stink. It was his way of trying to pop the bubble of seriousness that Sting had built around himself. It was a way to say, "You're not some deep artist, you just smell bad."
Rotten's the one that had the bad teeth, right? And then I spent all this money repairing them, and
This attack wasn't just about the music. It went after Sting's public image, too. As Sting became famous for supporting causes like saving the rainforests, Lydon's anger only grew. While many people saw a man who cared about the world, Lydon saw a celebrity collecting good guy points. He argued that by trying to support so many different causes, Sting made all of them seem less important.
I can't perform any new material live because the copyright laws would cripple me.
In an interview, Lydon explained his view with his usual biting humor. "Sting amuses me, because there's a man who's joined so many causes that he's dissipated the energy behind them, and you can't take anything he does too seriously anymore." In Lydon's mind, this wasn't real passion. It was a marketing plan for Sting's own brand. It was just another fake part of his act.
What does it mean
I
politically?
have had an enormous effect on the music industry.
This idea of Sting being a phony was what Lydon attacked the most. He loved making fun of what he saw as Sting's attempt to look like a deep thinker. The Police wrote songs with complicated lyrics about psychology and literature, which was a world away from the simple, powerful shouting of anarchy in the UK. When Sting would give interviews, he often sounded like a professor, talking about books and big ideas. Lydon found this absolutely hilarious and fake.
I ran into Sid, who was a mate of mine for a while, and we found this squat in Hampstead.
He perfectly captured his feelings in one of his most famous put-downs. He's gone and taken himself far too seriously, hasn't he? I am an intellectual, honest, please believe me. Look how unshaved I can be. With that one line, Lydon tore down the entire image. He painted a picture of Sting not as a real intellectual, but as a man desperately trying to convince everyone he was smart, right down to the carefully unshaved face meant to make him look like a serious artist.
No, and they all know, so you're not getting any negative responses, you might note, right?
Lydon himself was very smart, but he used his intelligence to tear things down with jokes and sarcasm. He saw Sting as using his intelligence as a costume to build himself up. Try to put yourself in Lydon's shoes back in the late 1970s. Punk rock was happening on the streets. It was about shared frustration, clothes held together with safety pins, and playing 3 chords as loudly as possible. It was a movement for kids who felt left out. Then, on the TV, here come the police.
Irish immigrant parents and all that was the party that would take care of us and get us proper housing.
They had stylishly dyed blonde hair, they could play their instruments incredibly well, and they sang songs like Roxanne, which was about a prostitute but sounded more like a sad, jazzy pop song than a story from the dirty city streets. For the man who famously snarled, "God save the Queen, she ain't no human being," this must have felt like a total betrayal. It felt like the enemy, the safe, boring establishment, was stealing the sound of the rebellion, cleaning it up, and selling it to the very parents the punks were trying to upset.
I did. I pointed to Richard Branson.
Every fancy bass line Sting played, every multi-syllable word he sang, and every soaring, high-pitched vocal was, to Lydon, another step away from real, honest rock music. His hatred wasn't just a personal dislike, it was a war over ideas. Sting stood for everything Lydon was fighting against. The smart, tricky establishment that could take any real art, sand off its rough parts, and turn it into a product. It was a battle for the very meaning of being a rock star, a clash between Johnny Rotten and the man he saw as perfectly polished and rotten in a completely different way. Lydon's fight was with a musician he saw as a phony from another class, but another rival's hatred was far more personal, rooted in a clash of style and pure attitude. Number 2. Paul Weller.
Well, it's just become not only where we work and where we create music.
To truly get why Paul Weller hates Sting with such a fiery passion, you have to know who Paul Weller is. Often called the Mod Father, he is the walking, talking symbol of a very specific, very British kind of cool. Since he first exploded onto the scene as the leader of the Jam, Weller has built his entire identity on a few key things: perfectly tailored suits, sharp Rickenbacker guitars, and angry poetic songs about the struggles of the English working class. His heroes were bands like The Who and The Kinks, groups that were tough, stylish, and never sold out.
Yes, we were influenced by the Sex Pistols, you know. Our main influence are Tamla Motown and Sex Pistols.
In this world of strict rules about what was cool and what wasn't, Sting was a disaster. He wasn't just uncool, he was the exact opposite of everything Weller believed in. The feud between them isn't just about music. It's a deep, personal, and almost tribal hatred that once boiled over in one of rock history's most famous acts of public disrespect. Weller's feelings became crystal clear to everyone when he walked up to a picture of Sting and spat on it. This wasn't a secret whispered backstage. It was a loud, deliberate gesture of disgust at a fancy public event.
It was a very good apprenticeship playing all them clubs and pubs, right? Because we played, generally speaking, we played to...
The moment happened in 2007 at the Royal Albert Hall during a concert for charity. It was so shocking that the newspapers wrote about it, with one calling it part of Weller's hate campaign against the former police frontman. Weller has never tried to hide his feelings. When reporters ask him why he dislikes Sting so much, he doesn't give a long, complicated answer. Instead, he uses short, brutal insults that hit like a punch. He's a horrible man, Weller once said, before adding, "Not my cup of tea at all." This is a very British way of saying you can't stand someone, and it's more powerful than a long speech.
So I thought it was a good enough time to do it now.
It means that on a basic level, he finds Sting and everything about him unpleasant. Weller's biggest criticism is that Sting lacks the very things that make a rock star great. He once said that Sting has no edge, no attitude, and nothing. For Paul Weller, a man whose entire career has been about having edge and attitude, this is the worst insult imaginable. He looked at Sting and saw a complete void.
Well, I mean, in recent years, I've done this similar sort of thing. I've co-written tunes with other people, which is something I never used to do.
Think about their bands. While the Jam were writing furious songs about class riots like the Eton Rifles, the Police were writing perfectly polished pop songs about a teacher falling for his student. To Weller, it was the difference between drinking a beer in a rough pub and sipping a glass of expensive wine at an art gallery. One felt real and raw. The other felt fake, boring, and completely empty of any real passion. The feud became famous, and the spitting incident was its most explosive moment.
And it was on Modern Classic, like you say. And I wrote it because I was doing a...
Picture the scene. The beautiful and historic Royal Albert Hall in London, filled with famous people for a good cause. Weller, a man who has always been proud of his tough, working-class roots, sees a large portrait of his arch-enemy. The picture of Sting, probably looking calm and worldly, represents everything Weller can't stand about modern celebrities. The smugness, the safe image, the total lack of grit. In that moment, years of annoyance boiled over. The spit was more than just an insult, it was a statement. It was a physical rejection of Sting's whole existence.
Positive way, really, but it's just plain to people, so...
It was a bit of punk rock nastiness thrown into a polite black tie event. It proved to everyone that Weller's hatred wasn't some fake rivalry cooked up for the newspapers. It was a real, raw, and deeply felt grudge that he was willing to act on in public. People have long wondered where this intense hatred started. Their musical styles are worlds apart, but some think it might have started over something more specific. One popular theory is that Weller's anger got much worse because of professional jealousy over a movie role.
To still try and surprise myself, you know, maybe not over the course of a whole album.
In 1984, Sting got a very noticeable part as the villainous Feyd Rautha Harkonnen in the big-budget science fiction movie Dune. It has been rumored for years that this was a role that Paul Weller, a known science fiction fan, wanted for himself. The part was highly sought after, and its high profile in such a major Hollywood production would have been a significant career move. If this is true, it adds a whole new layer to the feud. It would mean that Weller had to sit back and watch as the man he considered a musical lightweight and a poser successfully crossed over into acting, a world he might have wanted to conquer himself.
Against this government's policies, and probably in a more general way against whole of kind of the capitalist policies as well.
He likely saw Sting's casting not as a reflection of talent, but as a symptom of a celebrity-obsessed culture that valued fame over authenticity. This perceived injustice, where style triumphed over substance, would have been deeply offensive to Weller's working-class, artist-first principles. Imagine how that must have felt. The sight of Sting on movie posters and on the big screen, wearing a futuristic winged swimsuit, could have been the final straw.
And any blinkers I have had in my life when it comes to music have long gone, have long fallen away.
It would have felt like the world was unfairly rewarding the very person who stood for everything he was against. Whether it was because of a lost movie role, a fight for #1 albums in the early 1980s, or just a fundamental clash of personalities, the hatred is real. Paul Weller's dislike of Sting is one of the great unchanging truths of British rock. It's a pure and powerful grudge, held with the same passion he puts into his songs. Weller's hatred burned from the outside, but the most painful criticism often comes from within your own camp, from the man who started it all. Number 3. Stewart Copeland.
I just bang shit. And it's just with the best of intentions. difficult for us to work together.
Every great rock band has an origin story, and the story of the Police begins with the frantic, brilliant energy of its drummer, Stewart Copeland. Before the sold-out stadiums, the Grammy Awards, and the bitter fights, the Police was just an idea in Copeland's head. It was Copeland who, in 1977, found a bass player and singer named Gordon Sumner, who the world would soon know as Sting, and convinced him to start a band. In those first months and years, there was real magic between them.
He dodges the bullet. It's not about me. It's not I love you. It's someone else loves someone.
Copeland's wild and complex drumming, which mixed punk energy with reggae beats, created a unique sound. It was the perfect launching pad for Sting's catchy bass lines and his famous high-pitched voice. But their relationship, which started as a creative partnership, would become one of the most famous and ugly feuds in rock history. It was like a bond between brothers that soured under the heat and pressure of fame, turning into a nasty fight for power. Copeland's dislike for Sting wasn't like the others.
It was renowned the world over for the worst food on the planet.
Right. It wasn't the anger of a rival from another band. It was the much deeper, more personal pain of a founder who felt he was watching his creation being stolen from him by a massive ego. His complaints aren't just about musical style. They are the stories from a man who went to war, both with words and with his fists, against his own frontman for control of their band. Copeland has been very open about how the friendly teamwork in the band fell apart over time. In an old interview, he described the sad story of their partnership very clearly.
And it makes a lot more sense now, but when we did it, it was not a good thing.
At first it was a collaboration, Copeland said, thinking back to the early days when their combined creativity produced their first hits. But as the band got more successful, Sting's power grew. Because he wrote most of the songs and was the lead singer, he naturally became the focus of the band. According to Copeland, this change made making music together much more difficult. He explained, it became more and more compromise for him, and it got tougher and tougher for him to make those compromises. This one sentence explains the entire problem.
I told, yep, I got a band, we're called the Police, I got material, we got gigs, it's all going on.
From Copeland's point of view, the band he started as a team of equals was slowly turning into the Sting Show. The creative back and forth that made their early music so exciting was gone. Instead, Copeland and the guitarist, Andy Summers, were more and more expected to just do what Sting wanted. Every time they went into the studio, it was a potential fight. Every musical choice was a power struggle. Copeland was a creative and powerful musician himself, and was not happy just being the drummer in the background.
Well, doesn't everyone want to go to Africa? I mean, lions, tigers, giraffes, Watusis, Maasai warriors.
He felt he was the engine of the Police, and he was fighting a losing battle against the man who was now driving. This simmering anger finally exploded into an actual physical fight, a moment that is now a famous part of rock and roll history. The fight happened at Shea Stadium in 1983, when the band was at the absolute peak of their fame. The Police were one of the biggest bands on the planet, about to play for a massive, cheering crowd. But backstage, just before the show, all the years of anger and frustration boiled over.
He attended the same school, Millfield School in Somerset.
Is that right?
Before I was there, and when I was at Millfield, he was a big boss jock.
Copeland and Sting got into a furious argument that turned into a physical brawl. The details are shocking. Copeland later admitted that the fight ended with Sting getting a cracked rib. The image is hard to believe. Two members of a band known for their intelligent and sophisticated music were, just moments earlier, physically attacking each other like angry animals. They had to walk out on stage together and perform, hiding their fresh injuries and their boiling hatred from tens of thousands of adoring fans. It was a perfect symbol of their entire career, a brilliant, shiny surface hiding a broken and warring heart. The main problem, as Copeland has said again and again, was Sting's apparent ego and need for control. This wasn't just about disagreeing on how a song should sound. It was a basic clash of personalities that was made 100 times worse by the pressures of fame. Copeland, who started the band, probably always felt that the Police was his band. Sting, who wrote the songs that made them famous, probably started to feel that it was his art. The drummer, who is often the backbone of a band's sound, felt his importance shrinking.
As an employee, you learn things that an artist would never learn because you have to go there. Francis Coppola wants strings.
You can imagine his frustration during the recording of their final album, Synchronicity. Sting would come into the studio with songs that were almost completely finished, leaving very little room for Copeland and Summers to add their own creative ideas. The friction became so intense that they couldn't even stand to be in the same room. Producer Hugh Padgham famously set up Copeland's drum kit in the dining room of the Montserrat studio, while Sting directed him remotely from the control room via a video link.
Well, Mike Howlett called with Andy Summers, and he had the band that we were supposedly being was Strontium 90.
This physical and creative separation was a stark metaphor for their fractured relationship. Copeland's foundational reggae-infused polyrhythms were often at odds with the increasingly atmospheric and pop-oriented structures Sting was creating. What Copeland saw as the energetic, punk-inspired heart of the band, Sting now viewed as unnecessary clutter. Each instruction to simplify was not just a musical suggestion, but a personal invalidation of his artistic identity within the band he had founded. Even when the band got back together for a hugely successful reunion tour in 2007, people who worked with them said the same old fights started up again almost immediately. The years apart hadn't healed the wounds. Copeland's story is a warning about how fame and ego can destroy even the most brilliant creative partnerships. His anger at Sting comes from the memory of a friendship that fell apart, a team that became a dictatorship. It's the deep, complicated anger of a man for his musical brother, the co-pilot he once trusted, who, in his eyes, ended up hijacking the whole plane. Were these musicians right to hate Sting, or were their own egos just as big as his? Share your own thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.